Hey everybody, this is Jen. Welcome to the homestead and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be going out into the garden and doing some cleanup and some pruning and answering some of you guys' questions about when to prune your plants. So follow me along right here on Garden Jen's Journey. Okay, so it is a gorgeous day out today, and it's time to get out there and get some of the garden work done. So we're going to go out and we're going to start cleaning up the garden a little bit, pruning some of the things back that need to be pruned, and I'm going to show you what needs to be pruned and when. So let's head on out there. Okay, so we're out in the garden right now, and I'll share with you some insight on pruning your stuff. A lot of people say to prune your garden in the fall to get it cleaned up and put to bed for the winter, and things are dying down, and that's when you should prune it. Or like in the dead of winter when it's not growing, that's when you should prune it. And those are all good schools of thought, but let me share with you my school of thought and kind of what I've been doing here on the homestead for the past 7 years. I leave everything alone until the spring. So all my roses, all my annuals, all the herbs, I leave them alone until spring. The reason being that a lot of your beneficial insects, a lot of your pollinators actually use the garden waste, the dead trees, bushes, things like that, to hibernate in over the winter. And so if you clean up your garden spick and span and spotless, those beneficial insects have nowhere to hide over the winter, and you're really decreasing the chance that you'll have a good amount of beneficial insects the following year. So I let everything be until spring. Now granted, if you're in a place where you have to keep your areas pristine, I understand the conflict there that, you got to make things look nice. But try to have an area that's hidden, so to speak, that's full of all the clippings and stuff you might do, that's in like a brush pile, where your beneficial insects and critters can go in the winter and hibernate. And then when spring comes and they come out of hibernation, you can light that bad boy on fire or whatever you want to do to it at that point in time. So that's what I generally do. Now, I just started pruning my roses. Again, the rule of thumb is to either prune them in the fall or in the dead of winter while they're going dormant, but I like to prune them in the spring. Reason being is I'm not 100% on knowledge on my different rose varieties and what's a first year cane, what's a second year cane, which roses grow on which canes every year. And so I wait until the spring, and I wait till I start seeing little tiny buds on my roses, the leaf buds forming on my roses. Then I know which canes that I can trim back, and I don't have to worry about accidentally cutting the wrong cane or leaving dead wood that doesn't need to be there. So that's what I do with my roses. Again, it probably goes against the, what everybody else says you should do, but this is what I do in my garden, and it has worked for me, which is why I'm sharing it with you. Just because it's been said over and over and over again to do it this way and not this way, doesn't mean that it doesn't work if you do it out of the norm, so to speak. So I'm going to kind of show you what I'm doing here and give you an idea so you can put it into practice at your own garden if you'd like, just to see how and when to prune everything in your garden. Okay, so these are some roses that I just pruned. And I want to show you something. Again, because I'm not 100% up on the exact varieties and what canes the new growth grows on and stuff, I prune them in the spring. That way I know which canes are the new growth. These roses I dug out of my rose garden. These are kind of like a wild rose, and they get really, really big and tall, and they actually spread. They throw out runners, kind of like your trumpet vines and stuff do. And so I had a whole bunch of these growing in spots I didn't want them. So I dug them up. But there seems to be two different varieties here, because some have old canes, which is completely dead, and is putting out new canes for the year. And then some, the growth is growing on the old canes. So I'll kind of show you that if I can, because I did a lot of pruning. Somebody's actually coming to get these tomorrow. But you can see the new growth here on this cane. It's where I trimmed it down. And then the old growth, there's nothing growing there, so I cut that completely off. You see this cane here, it looks dead. But if you look at it, I don't know if the camera can pick it up. See the tiny buds on it? So this cane is not dead, it's actually alive. And it's putting out some buds. So I trimmed it down a little bit because, like I said, somebody's coming to get these, so I didn't want them 6 feet tall. But you have to, this is why I prune them in the spring, so I can see what's alive and what is not. Same here with my Neil Diamond rose. This is a beautiful rose, and it was taller than this post here. It was, I think the longest cane here, which is this bad boy. I think it's 4 foot tall. But anyways, you can see where it's at now. It's completely down to the ground because I had to look and see how this grows. And this, by looking at it, it throws off new shoots, not through the old canes, because all these are basically dead, the old canes from last year, but it does have new growth at the bottom. So that's why, again, I wait until the spring. Alright, so this is my sage plant here. This is my oldest sage plant. I had 3 of them in the garden. I don't know if the other 2 still exist or not, but this is the oldest of them. And somebody asked, when do you prune your sage? Now, to be honest, I've never really pruned it except when I notice there's dead stuff. The best way to prune your sage, if you're concerned about it, is in the fall, harvest, cut it down halfway, cut the whole plant like halfway down to the ground, and dehydrate your sage so you have it over the winter, because this bad boy will grow back as long as you leave at least half of it above ground. But like I said, I generally don't prune my sage until the spring, if I notice that there's a lot of dead growth on it or stuff like that. Because you see, I still have these that look dead. They are actually still alive. And so I just kind of watch it. And I'm actually going to prune a little bit today after I have to unbury this a little bit and see how much growth is down there. But I generally don't touch this until I know that there's enough growth down there where if cutting off the leaves, it still can photosynthesize. So that's one of the biggest things about pruning stuff in the spring as well. If you're uncertain, especially with your perennials, like my sage, my bean balm, my lemon balm, all those types of mints, the big stuff that gets bushy and then dies back every year, I make sure that at the ground level that there is enough leaves to photosynthesize to keep putting energy back into the plant to get it a good start for the year. Because if you cut the leaves off too soon, then you're really expecting the roots to provide all that energy, and sometimes it works. But if you have a frost or something that kills off all the new growth, then you're kind of screwed. That's the best way I can put it. But if you leave the leaves alone until a little bit later, when you know that new growth has got a very good start, your chances of survival for your perennials are that much better. So let's dig around in here and see what I can find. Alright, so in all honesty, this sage plant does not look as healthy as it used to. And maybe that's because it's so old, I don't know. But there's a lot of dead wood on here. And there's only a little bit of stuff that's actually growing. There's a few new growth here. Some new growth there, a little bit here. But not a lot yet. And I can tell by bending the stick, that's completely dead. So if you bend a stick that's completely dead, it's going to snap. Or if it doesn't snap, that means that it's still alive. So this, again, dead, dead. But these ones are still alive because they have bend in them. So we're just going to let them be, see how this does, see if I get some new growth on it. I'll probably plant some more as a backup because this is looking kind of sparse this year. But this is just the end of April, so it could all of a sudden fill up with lots and lots of leaves. So we're just going to let this be. Now hyssop, this is my blue hyssop plant. Hyssop dies completely back every year and sends out brand new shoots. So it's perfectly fine. I'm going to take out my phone in my pocket. It's perfectly fine to cut this all the way back in the spring. So there is some that does grow. Like when you cut it back, you'll notice where the new stuff's growing. So you cut it all back till you get to the new shoots here. So we're just going to cut this down. Just like giving a haircut. Okay. Again, I'm just cutting back to where I see some new growth. And if you cut a little bit too much back, that's fine, as long as you don't overdo it. And one of the things about hyssop is as it grows, if it's laying on the ground, it'll root itself. And so if you're trying to prevent it from spreading too far, you definitely have to cut those branches, which is kind of what I'm doing. I'm cutting it back a little bit because it does creep. There we go. There we go. So my hyssop's cut back. Got a lot of new growth on it. So this will fill right out again. And just a matter of months, it's going to be beautiful. This is the one of many coneflowers I have. Again, I just let it be until spring. A lot of insects rest upon the different branches in here and stuff, and so I let it be. And I'll cut it down. I can see that it has some valerian growing there in the middle of that. That's what this is. Let's see if I can zoom in for you. That growing right in the middle there is valerian. I had taken out 2 big plants last year. My 2 main plants, I took them out because it was finally time to take them out and actually harvest the Valerian root. You have to wait at least 3 years for valerian to grow big enough to have a giant root system where you can harvest it. And one of the things I found out about valerian is if you're not careful, it puts out big, huge, beautiful flower clusters in the middle of the summer. And if you don't cut those clusters off before they go to seed, valerian sells seeds, and it can become very invasive depending on the type of wind you get in your area, which is how I have some valerian growing in some different spots in my garden this year. But that's okay. You know, I can dig it up where I don't want it and leave it, you know, in certain areas. It's not going to be a big deal. But I'm just going to go ahead and cut these stalks of the coneflower down because I'm done with them. Okay, so that is how I do pruning here in my own personal garden. I just wait till spring when things start showing life. That way I know what to cut and what not to cut. Again, with the herbs and things, if you're really concerned that, you know, there's going to be too much growth, go ahead and cut the plant like half down to the ground and dehydrate those herbs for yourself for over the winter. And then you'll have left enough growth for it to get going again in the spring. That's how I do it, and it just seems to work. So give it a try in your own garden. Thank you so much for being with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you some answers and some insight on what to do with your garden adventure. If you haven't already, please make sure to click the subscribe button down below. Love to have you along on this journey. We have a lot more going on this year. And as always, I hope wherever you are, you're wonderfully blessed. So until next time, everybody, bye-bye.